Right, good evening everybody and welcome to tonight's Governance Committee on the 9th of September. I'm Councillor Tim Lunnan and I'm the chair of this meeting. There's no members of the public, so I'm going to skip that section of the agenda. But just to remind you all, this is being live streamed on the Council's YouTube channel. There's no comments function as part of this webcasting, and the Council is the data controller and will retain the data collected during this webcast. This will be done in accordance with the Council's published retention policy. Obviously, councillors, please remember that you are on screen a lot of the time. So I'm going to move on to apologies for absence. Have we received any apologies for absence?
We haven't, Chair, no.
Okay. Moving on to disclosures of interest. Are there any disclosures of interest councillors wish to declare? No, fantastic. So moving on to the minutes. We are now going to review the minutes and check that we can approve them. So does the Governance Committee approve the minutes of the meeting held on the 10th of June 2024? Agreed, fantastic. Racing through this. Right, public question time, no luck there. Moving on to the next item, the draft annual governance statement, which is for 2023-2024, and I'll ask Anna Pedlow to present the report.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. It is a requirement of the accounts and audit regulations that all local authorities produce an annual governance statement. And the objective of the annual governance statement is for the council to summarise the extent to which it has complied with its own code of governance. And it is a function of the governance committee to monitor and review the corporate governance of the council. Alongside this, the CITFA Solace Delivering Good Governance publication defines the various principles of good governance in the public sector. And this document sets out 7 core principles that underpin the governance framework, and that is used as a guide when compiling the annual governance statement. The annual governance statement for 23-24 sets out the Council's review of compliance and supporting evidence against these principles. Effort has been made to summarise the key points with hyperlinks included to the relevant document or policy. The draft annual governance statement 23-24 has not reported any significant risks or actions. The Chief Internal Auditor's annual report and opinion, which was presented to Audit Committee on the 9th of July 24, confirmed that the framework of governance, risk management and management control are reasonable. Audits that receive limited assurance in 23-24 have management actions identified and are monitored by our corporate management team and the Audit Committee. During the review of governance arrangements, any areas that may present some challenges during the coming 24-25 year have been identified under the Governance Challenges section in the Annual Governance Statement, and these will be monitored by the Corporate Management Team. You'll see those in relation to the Council's financial resilience and the Regulator of Social Housing have also been identified as strategic risks, which are also regularly monitored by the Corporate Management Team and the Audit Committee. Also, progress against these governance challenges will be reported in the Annual Governance Statement for 24-25, so these will constantly be under review. As part of the report, the Governance Committee are recommended to consider the latest draft of the Annual Governance Statement and provide any comments for incorporation into the final version, which will then be endorsed by the Audit Committee. So if there's any comments.
I'll bring in Ian Duke before I'll open up to councillors.
Yeah, just quickly, there's been a lot of effort in the last months to look at the format of this, to try and make it clear, to reduce kind of duplication that I think might have appeared in previous ones, and looking across sort of best practice elsewhere to bring it in. Fundamentally, it was always a sound document in terms of meeting the principles, but I think really just having an easier to navigate document, a clearer document, within that doing a double check that we're covering all bases, but also one that's kind of a bit more action oriented, or at least more obviously action oriented, kind of within there as well. So hopefully members of the committee found it an easier read, and that will apply to others as well. I would just say that the annual governance statement is taking on a greater importance in terms of the way that local authorities will be assessed in the future, and making sure that these are stronger documents and working documents. So please treat this as a working document. It will be adapted, it will develop over time. This is still a draft before it gets finalised, but it's an opportunity to input at this stage.
Okay, thank you, Ian, and thank you, Anna. Right, over to the councillors. Who's got any questions or comments on this particular item? If you can indicate by raising your hands. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to start with Councillor Pritchard.
Just a quick point, and it's the one I made just before the meeting, the date to the last constitution change needs amending.
Go for it, Anna. Sorry.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, I suppose it reiterates Ian's point about it being a working document. Yes, because obviously the constitution will get updated as and when. So yes, I note that needs to be updated. So I will take that away and update that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Next, I've got Councillor Barrett and then Councillor Quo.
Yeah, thank you so much for your work on this. I think it's a really clear and helpful document. I absolutely understand why Oflog is one of the 4 areas of focus at the moment. However, I would just like to use this as an opportunity to put on record some of my concerns about Oflog. So I'm explicitly talking about the Data Explorer here. I think there are nuances which are missed by Oflog's league table approach, and the fact that the data is presented without any kind of wider contextual information further exacerbates that. The data in Oflog isn't always up to date. So if you take a look at the data for the percentage of household waste recycled, in Crawley it's showing as 21-22, when in actual fact I think the data is available for the next financial year. So if it's not making those updates in real time, then I sort of question what value it's adding. I think its remit is extremely narrow. You know, there's 5 themes, there's a handful of accompanying metrics. They don't necessarily correlate to our priorities as a local authority. And then finally, I think it's also quite duplicative of data platforms that are already available and exist and that you can better benchmark against. So there are several reasons why I think that it's regrettable that Oflog has to be one of our key priorities. But I really hope that since the change in government that there's going to be a different emphasis going forward in terms of its remit. And I hope in future that can be reflected in us being able to kind of reassess those priorities going forward. And as you said, it's a working document. Thank you.
Do you want to respond to that at all, you two?
Not specific. I think it's a comment rather than one for us to necessarily answer to. So I'll probably leave it there.
Councillor Quo.
Thank you, Chairman. I have seen previous iterations in previous years of this report, although I have to say I don't remember it in the last couple of years. I'm quite sure it has come forward, I'm sure, but I just don't, perhaps we were preoccupied with other business, but it was not memorable enough for me to remember it, if I could perhaps put it like that. In some ways, this report does, to some degree, write itself in that it sort of states the functions of the council and the processes that are in place. And, I welcome the sort of the simplification that was mentioned by the Chief Executive earlier. But it does feel that a lot of this could be cut and pasted from previous years, and this could be cut and pasted into future years' reports in terms of what we do. I do appreciate that some things do change slightly. There isn't really anything in the report that I could. I've got one question as well, but there isn't really anything in the report that I could sort of dispute as such in terms of, I think it does set out what the council does and what the functions are. But my question is along the lines of, I'm not quite sure why it goes to audit first, or something. We were told that something goes to the audit committee first, and then the whole report's coming to us, and then we recommend the report to the audit committee. I suppose they're the ones that have the if you like, the process in signing it off. But I'm not quite sure why something goes to the audit committee first and then comes here. But when there was just a more sort of broad point. When I think of good governance, I would say that perhaps my own observations at meetings and those of many members of the public, the term good governance is not something that would automatically spring to mind. Now, don't get me wrong, decisions are made and taken at meetings, but how you get there, I would not describe in many cases in being in a quality way. And I appreciate that all members are responsible for the quality and the the quality and the staying on topic of debate of the items that we have. But we do see some really bad, and I think for example, I quote one committee, the cabinet. We do see some members of the cabinet going way off on tangent when discussing items of business. And I'll give the chair, the cabinet, some credit in that he does try to steer it back in somewhat when he sees that. But there are some other committees where the chairing is far from good, and the quality of debate is not good. And also there's one committee where it feels overtly politicised for a statutory function. So the term good governance is not something that springs to mind when I observe meetings, but I will stay on topic, and the document that we have in place, there isn't anything for me to disagree with, and I thank the officers for producing it, and I'll be happy to support its recommendation going to the Audit Committee. Thank you.
Do you just want to answer the one question that Councillor Crowe had about why it comes to us and then goes to the Audit Committee?
It comes to governance because the responsibility in terms of the governance of the council. So it comes here first, but it's the Audit Committee that endorse it because that goes alongside with the Statement of Accounts. So obviously it was due to go to November audit, but the Statement of Accounts won't be ready for that meeting. So it's likely that this will be going to a later Audit Committee now. But it's opportunity for you to obviously feed in any comments that can obviously go into another version before it gets the final say-so endorsed at Audit Committee. So that's the route that it goes through. You have an opportunity to feed into that, but it gets endorsed alongside the Statement of Accounts because it sits alongside that.
Okay, and just so we're all clear, will material changes be made to this document in between it leaving us and it being approved by the Audit Committee, considering we don't know when the Audit Committee might actually approve it? Is that possible, or does it have to actually roughly stay in its current format?
There'll obviously be some minor changes because although it covers sort of the financial year until the end of March 24, it does cover the period in which time it is signed off alongside the Statement of Accounts. So that's why it is sort of an ongoing document. So yeah, there'll probably still be opportunity to update. So there are a couple of things to take away from today. So if there are any other things between now and when it finally gets the endorsement, then those will be added.
Thank you for that. Councillor Crowe has indicated.
Thanks. Just want to come back on a quick. So apologies if I've misunderstood. I thought that you said earlier that a part of this report went to the Audit Committee first before coming to governance, and then the whole thing's going back to governance. So what was the part of the report that goes to audit first before coming here, and why is that?
That's the annual audit report. That goes to Audit Committee. So I need that audit opinion to then appear in the governance statement. And that's why the sequencing sometimes goes a little bit out of kilter. But yeah, that's referring to the annual audit opinion.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody else have any? Councillor Jones. Go for it.
Thank you, Chair. I must say I agreed with a great number of Councillor Barrett's comments on Oflog. I would say I think this is a very solid, accessible document. The 4 areas of focus that have been identified are the correct ones as far as I'm concerned. I think suggestions, some might call them something even stronger, accusations that discussions at meetings are not always on topic. Sometimes fall to a matter of interpretation. Sometimes one person's idea of something that's not on topic is another person's idea of something that's linked. So I think we have to forgive all the chairs of all the committees and indeed the mayor at full council if there's some latitude. I would say, however, that generally my observation of the committees is that they're and their discussions it would not be my observation that the chairs allow too much off-topic observations, but I suppose it is fair that it never hurts to remind all chairs, I suppose, that members and the public, when they're given a chance, must be encouraged to stay on topic as far as is possible. But alas, we don't live in a perfect world, Chair, and I think we'll just have to try, in the interests of democratic debate, to balance all those considerations. Thank you.
Right, I don't think there's anything further there, although I will take both Councillor Crow's and Councillor Jones' comments on board in my future chairing of this committee. Obviously, you've been far too chatty in this committee. And anyway, so there have been some comments made, and also, as has been alluded to, the original recommendation was to put this forward to the November audit committee, but as being alluded to, we're not sure that'll necessarily, the statement of accounts might not be ready by then. So I'm going to propose an amendment to the recommendation, and that is that the comments provided to the committee be incorporated into the final version of the evidence governance, which is to be endorsed by a future meeting of the audit committee. So that's my recommendation. I need somebody to second it. Thank you, Councillor Pritchard. So if everybody's happy, can we have a vote on that recommendation, please? All those in favour? Me, sorry. And all those against? No, and no abstentions. So that's good, that's carried. So that is that item passed, and there are no further items for the committee to consider, and therefore, with the business of the committee concluded, the meeting is now closed at 7:17. The next meeting is scheduled for the 12th of November 2024. Thank you for your participation today. Yeah, well, wait until November, I warn you of that. I'll be even shorter.